Welcome to Ray's Quest Body and Mind. Tonight's guest speaker is Richard Schaefer, and we'll be discussing symbols, a little bit of history, and a little bit of the power of symbols to influence the subconscious mind. You're going to like this.
Good evening. My name is Ray Dwyer, and this is Ray's Quest Body and Mind. This evening, we welcome Richard Schaefer, and the subject is symbols. We are thrilled to introduce a guest who is remarkably fusion of technology and spirituality, a leader in the corporate world and a seeker in the metaphysical realm. Richard's professional journey is nothing short of extraordinary. For 16 years, he served as the Chief Technology Officer for two different tech startup companies. He has also led global enterprise solutions teams across Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies, completely transforming them by developing technical roadmaps and digitally transforming them end to end. His innovative mind has driven two patents, one in hardware and one in workflow optimization, showcasing his dedication to technological advancement and creative problem solving. But there's another side to Richard that goes beyond his corporate achievements. For over 2 decades, Richard has been deeply immersed in the study of metaphysics, Eastern and Western belief systems, and various esoteric traditions. His explorations of Rosicrucian, Hermeticism, Vedic medicine, Taoist, Qigong, traditional Chinese medicine, coupled with his keen interest in quantum physics, metaphysics, consciousness, psychology, and spirituality, has led him on a profound journey to understand the essence of all things, which he calls the core. Richard's quest for the core, the fundamental meaning behind various belief systems, reflects his intellectual pursuits. Today, Richard joins us to delve into the topic that resonates deeply with his journey, the power and profundity of symbols. Our discussion will explore how symbols in esoteric documents contain volumes of information within a single image. We'll unravel the mystery of word etymology, esoteric architecture, multi layered meaning of Hebrew letters, and the significance of shapes in conveying complex concepts. Richard's unique perspective blends his technological expertise with his spiritual insights, offering us a rare understanding of how these symbols shape our consciousness and reality. So prepare to embark on a fascinating journey into the world of symbols, where each sign and symbol is a portal to deeper knowledge and understanding. Please join me in welcoming a man who lives at the intersection of technology and spirituality, my friend, Richard Schaefer.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. And by the way, that's Qigong. And that was a Qigong is simply Qi is energy and Gong is work. So it's energy work. It's not a martial art. It's more of a way to begin to bring in a lot of those energies into the body. It's a awesome thing to start learning. If anybody ever has a chance to learn Qigong, I would highly recommend it. And then, of
Qigong.
course, doing it daily. Yes.
Qigong. Got it.
Qigong. Yes.
Of all
Yeah.
things to slip on, something simple like that.
Yeah, it's just Qigong. But anyway, thank you all so much for being here, and I'm excited to share what I have. As he was going down that list, I completely forgot about the Hebrew letters and things like that I was going to talk about because I got so focused on everything else. But we might bring some of that in. So, all right. I
The
wanted
first
to kind of
question,
start.
the first
Yes.
question on the top of my mind, and I'm sure they want to know a reference point. So let's start with the definition. What is a symbol?
That's a good place to start because the thing with symbols is they look so simple at the beginning of a symbol. And a symbol is really something that's been used for a millennia in multiple different ways, which is what we're going to get into in the various ways that symbols can be represented and that kind of thing. But at the very basic core of a symbol is it's a powerful tool that allows you to be able to communicate a very deep meaning that transcends ordinary language. Now, I'm going to use some words probably through this conversation at some point. So I want to be able to set a baseline and an understanding of why I'm using these words and the meaning that I am using these words with, rather than the traditional, if you will, understandings. Number one, I'm going to use the word occult, potentially, in some point somewhere, right? And that word in and of itself just means hidden. That's all it means. It means hidden. And where that applies is with symbols. For example, when you meditate on symbols, you begin getting information that boils up and bubbles up from within your own consciousness. That is that hidden information that then surfaces within you. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about something that is hidden or something that is occult. I'm also going to use the word esoteric versus exoteric. Esoteric is something that is typically trained to very few people. It's information given to very few people, and even fewer of those people actually embody that and allow that information to expand within themselves. So when I use the words esoteric, that's what I'm talking about, is something that's not really prevalent within most people's teachings or most people's understandings. And one of the things that I'm also going to probably, and I may or may not bring up, is the mysteries. Why is it a mystery? Because it will remain a mystery. It will remain occulted within your consciousness until you're ready for it to blossom and fill your consciousness with a lot of information. It's why a lot of people say that you cannot buy this information. You cannot pay somebody to give you this information. Why? Because it's got to come up into and through you and really connect within your consciousness. Now, symbols are very powerful because they work at bypassing the guardian at the gate, right? Your ego, your consciousness, your persona, that is always going to be there. And I don't know how much, a lot of y'all have done any kind of research or anything into psychology and the growth of the human consciousness and how we move through the different phases we do through our lives. It is through our consciousness that we can bring forth a lot of this information, because you have your own individualized expression. You have your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, but then you have a greater consciousness that you can begin to access, like through meditation and through various different practices. It is through those practices that you're reaching out into a much greater consciousness and being able to draw that archetypal information into you. And of course, let's go ahead and talk about really quick, if you don't mind, before we get into how they can be presented. I'd really like to hit archetypal, so we have a little bit of a baseline and an understanding of what archetypes are. For a long time, archetypes were something that kind of eluded me in understanding what an archetype was. So an archetype, it's a fundamental and universal symbol or pattern or theme that exists in the collective unconscious of humanity. So archetypes they're considered to be inherent in the human psyche and are shared by people across different cultures and eras. It's one of the reasons why you'll find that a lot of symbols are the same throughout various different cultures, different belief systems, and they all hold the same meaning, which is really fascinating when you start getting into it. It's because those archetypes were able to present themselves to the people that within that culture or whatever, and they then begin using that symbol out there. So an archetype is really something that Carl Jung came up with. And some of the archetypes that, just really quick and easy ones that we can think of is like the hero or the mother, the trickster, the mentor, the shadow, the anima or the animus, and, things like that. These are all different types of archetypes, and they are symbols for a specific type of action or experience or something like that. So, does that answer the question on what a symbol is? And
Yeah, I think that's great. Oops. Yeah, I think that's great. It's symbol. One of the things about symbols that's hard to grasp for someone who hasn't really spent the time on it is that it's an abstract idea. It's one of those things that can be in front of you and not recognize it as a symbol because it's so prevalent that you've got accustomed to it and you don't know that you're being subjected to a symbol and and having that symbol suggest to you without even you knowing it.
very much so. So, how are symbols presented to us? Or what are different ways that symbols are used within our experience here? Well, symbols can be put together in like sigils, visual art, icons, language, writing, right? For example, parables, right? Those are symbols to convey a much deeper and greater meaning. Rituals, ceremony, architecture, sacred geometry. I know somebody mentioned that earlier. That's another way that a lot of these symbols are presented to us through nature, through numbers, mathematics, colors. There's many different ways. And then, of course, combining those together. What's very interesting is I'm sure we've all heard the saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, a symbol is worth volumes of books. And when you combine symbols together, it is an incredible amount of information being presented to you right in front of you that you have no idea. One of the great things about symbols is that I mentioned this earlier, it bypasses the guardian at the gate and it speaks to the deeper part of yourself without the conscious mind rejecting it, without the conscious mind pushing back on that if it opposes some other internal belief that you have. This is how symbols can be used very powerfully to get past that guardian at the gate. This is done all the time, especially in cathedrals and churches and a lot of the ancient architecture, which we're going to kind of get into hopefully near the end of this conversation. Is one of the things that I enjoyed was going through a lot of the ancient cathedrals and churches over in Ukraine and just seeing nothing but just symbolism everywhere in the architecture, in the artwork, in everything. And it'll just completely blow your mind. So these things are, I just lost my mind, well, my thought there for a moment there. Okay. So now that we understand how symbols can be conveyed to us, how we can receive these symbols, we need to really understand what do these symbols represent? What are different things that these symbols can be conveying to us in some way? I touched on archetypes earlier. Archetypes are one of the definite ways that a symbol can be used. Universal laws. I'm sure, hopefully, I think a lot of people here probably have heard of like the law of attraction, right? That's one of the universal laws. The law of attraction actually is a combination of even more base or baseline universal laws, which we'll get into that probably here in a little bit or very shortly. Just to touch on what those are. Now, if we want to go deeper into just that, the Hermetic 7 universal principles, if we want to expand on that, we can do that in another conversation. But I do want to be able to at least bring those out and bring a little baseline understanding of it, because when we get to start looking at these symbols, it's going to be very obvious that you've got to have a good foundation in these principles to really start drawing from these symbols a lot of their meanings. It can represent different forces. It can represent different psychological states. It can represent different mystical experiences, ethical and moral lessons, astrological influences. These are all different ways that symbols can be representing a much deeper understanding. So are we good here?
Yes.
You got any questions? I can't hear you, Ray.
No, we're all good. I was helping somebody with the chat thing.
Okay. So again, we talked about on how the symbols work. The symbols work by getting past that guardian at the gate. As you start really diving into a lot of different information out there, it's really good to have a foundational or a baseline that you can start judging the different things or understanding the different things that you're coming into contact with. Because, you know, we live in a world of duality and the different poles, and not everything is going to be one extreme or the other. It's always going to be some kind of gradient in the middle and in between these various the law of polarity. There you go. The law of polarity is one of the principles, and we probably should just jump into that one right now, if you don't mind. Is this a good point to jump into the Hermetic principles?
Oh yeah, because what we're doing right now is building a foundation of understanding of the power of symbols, and that these are real energy beings, real energy forces that we deal with every moment of our life and don't realize it. And so the Hermetic principles will kind of give us a foundation of that understanding.
Right. So I'd like to jump into that real quick. I'm going to give a quick example and what's called an axiom. And that, again, is another one of those ways that a symbol can be presented to us. So, for example, in the Hermetic principles, you have the principle of mentalism. And the axiom is the all is mind, the universe is mental. And that principle really, it asserts the fact that the fundamental nature of the universe is mental or consciousness based. So everything originates from mind or consciousness. And that's very interesting choice of words that I used, which is from mind, not from the mind. Right? We all have different degrees and connections with the greater consciousness that is within our own individualized expression that we are. So the principle of mentalism is definitely one of the big ones, I think, in the 7 Hermetic principles. And then, of course, you've got the principle of correspondence. I'm sure a lot of people have heard as above, so below, as within, so without. Those kind of things. And this principle, it just basically suggests that there's a correspondence between the macrocosm, the much larger universe, and the microcosm, you know, the very smaller universe like ourselves, and that the patterns and laws that govern one level of existence are reflected in the others. Another thing that is a really interesting point there is think about a reflection. When you look in a mirror, things are reversed. So every single movement is a back and forth motion. So we also have the principle of polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites, right? Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but they differ in degrees. So the principle really highlights the duality and the polarity that is present in all aspects of existence, with opposites being part of the same continuum. Now, did I already hit vibration?
No.
No. Okay. Okay. The principle of vibration is that nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Even if we look at something and it's stationary, or we think it's stationary, as you begin to go deeper into the microcosm, you will find that there's all kinds of activity. There's all kinds of things moving within that. So that's really what this is talking about. And the principle really emphasizes the fact that everything in the universe is in constant motion and vibration, from the smallest subatomic particles all the way to the largest celestial bodies. And then we have the principle of rhythm. Everything flows in and out. Everything has tides. All things rise, all things fall. The pendulum swings and manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. And rhythm compensates that. So the principle really suggests that there's a natural rhythm and cycles to the universe. And understanding these cycles can lead to greater harmony and balance. Then you have the principle of cause and effect. For every cause, it has an effect. Every effect has a cause, right? These are very much like the Newton's law of physics. And, something in motion remains in motion unless it, is stopped or whatever. So you have the principle of cause and effect. Everything works off of everything else. Everything is moved by everything else. So there's always a constant movement. And again, that goes back to the principle of rhythm as well. And then we get into the principle of gender. And the principle of gender is, at its very core, masculine or feminine. So really, we've got to kind of think about for just a moment, what really does this denote when we talk about the masculine or the feminine? It's not necessarily a male-female thing. It is much more of for example, masculine is very active, rational, assertive, analytical, structural, authoritative, logical, protective, those kind of energies. Whereas a feminine energy is more receptive, intuitive, nurturing, emotional, relational, collaborative, empathetic, reflective. It is the forces and how they work between each other. Now, there is the one symbol that is very prevalent across a lot of different systems, and that is the Kabbalistic tree of life. The Kabbalistic tree of life is a symbol, and on the right pillar and the left pillar, you have the masculine and the feminine, and it is all those forces in between these pillars that all of these different understandings come from.
Richard,
and then, of course, yes.
There's a lot of people have never seen that. Do you have a picture you could pop up for just the basic Tree of Life symbol?
I do.
Okay.
I didn't expect to get so thirsty doing this. And so I apologize if I keep taking a moment to, okay. So there it is. Share the screen. And tell me if everybody can see that.
There it is. Very good, Richard.
Okay. So that is the tree of life. And you can see, and this is really going to play very deeply into a lot of the symbolism that I'm going to show you probably here in a few minutes. And so as you can see from this particular symbol here, you can see at the very top, you have your Keter, which is the crown. You have Bina and Hokmah. This is what's known as the supernal triangle. You will find this triangle in quite a lot of different places in symbolism. You're going to find that triangle is very much, that Trinity is very strong in the Christian religion as well. So when you start talking about coming from Keter and how the energy comes down the tree of life, these are the different, each one of these circles are called Sephiroth. And each one of them has different meanings. But before we jump into just these symbols and the tree of life here, we also need to understand that the same grouping of information, the Kabbalistic teachings, are from Judaism. Now, one thing I'd like to step back on real quick here is one thing that I found very, very, very fascinating as I started really jumping into and trying to learn a lot of this stuff was that almost every single belief system out there has both the esoteric side and the exoteric side of teachings, except for the Christian religion, where a lot of that was, shall we say, hidden from the masses. And within those teachings, you miss a lot of the symbolism and the depth of meaning behind them unless you go into other areas, gain that understanding, and then come back and start seeing it with a completely different perspective. So the four Kabbalistic worlds is what is very prevalent within the Kabbalistic belief system. And there is one symbol I wanted to show you guys that really puts this into perspective, if I can find it. There it is. Okay, let me stop sharing that. And then let me share this right here. Can you see this?
Oh, that's wild.
Okay. If you remember, I just showed you one of them that brought you down through and into Malkut. All right. But as you can see, this is actually 4 different trees of life that are all blended together. And the thing is these 4 Kabbalistic worlds, it's not like it's a step down from one to the other, to the other, to the other, but it's really a blending of all 4 of them as they come down. And it's very difficult to try to convey that in some kind of image or symbol like this, except for the way that they've got it set up here. But when you look at, let's say, for example, the actual tree of life that I was showing you just a minute ago, right here, think of this as a 2-dimensional view, where actually it's a 4. It's all 4 of them are different faces of a cube, basically, is one way to also look at this particular symbol. And so each one of these are from the 4 Kabbalistic worlds. And I promise you there is a reason why I'm trying to go through all of this, because I'm going to show you some really amazing stuff from a church that I walked into in Ukraine, that all of this is going to play into what we're about to talk about. So you've got the 4 worlds, which is Bria, Yetzirah, Asaya, and Absolute. And so you've got all 4 of those. Absolute is the world of emanation. You've got Bria, which is the world of creation. You've got Yetzirah, which is the world of formation. And Asaya, which is the world of action. So you've got these main energies within these different symbols that all work together. They are not something that is completely separate, but they all are all together and working together in order to be able to create this experience at every level of consciousness. So that's just kind of a very quick look at that. Now, we also probably need to run into, if you guys don't mind going down, I know I've got some information around each one of these, I thought. Yeah, I don't want to get into that right now without my notes. Okay. So let me stop there. And is there any questions you have right now before I get moving on, Ray?
A quick question for you, Richard.
Sure.
Is it worth mentioning, or like with the Hebrew alphabet, that each of those characters is in fact symbol that represents so much more than just we're so used to a letter being just, well, that makes one sound. We put them together and then we have something of meaning, and yet in that language, that one letter is packed full of information.
Absolutely. And that's a very good point that you made. And thank you for bringing up the one thing that I didn't prepare myself for in this conversation.
All good.
But right off the top of my head. So, for example, Aleph. Aleph is the very first letter of the Hebrew alphabet.
Well, you
And
could go back
Aleph,
to that. Excuse me, Richard. You could go back to the tree of life, and as you go through the difference, you could say that the
There we
Hebrew
go.
letters go down the entire tree of life, and the entire Hebrew alphabet is in the tree of life. Represented.
well,
There
that's
you go.
true.
I got it out.
Yes, it is.
And I don't want to sidetrack you. I just wanted to throw that out there since we're kind of in the middle of it all, and I was looking at those characters that Ray was talking about. Yeah.
Right. And they are on this one, aren't they? Very much so. So as you can see that there are the paths in between are each associated with each one of the letters. Now, where is my Aleph at? I have,
Aleph is between one Kether and Hukmah.
yeah, right there. Okay. Aleph is known as, it's also represented by the bull, motive power. And this is just off the top of my head, so forgive me. It's been a while since I've dove into the take the mic for a moment, and I know exactly where I'm going to go to pull this up. I've got
Sure.
something that we can pull up and look at. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, the entire Hebrew letter alphabet is symbolized right in this symbol of the tree of life. So the entire culture, the entire language of Hebrewism in the spiritual sense is nothing like the English language, which is just about a bunch of sounds like what Sean mentioned a moment ago. Everything they say, every word that they use has a symbolic character to it. Just for instance, let's go back to Aleph. Aleph is the energy that goes from number one to number two, from the Kether, the energy, to Hukmah, which is the male energy, and so that is a male force. But if you go to the left from one to three, that's Beth. Beth is female energy. That yeah, I didn't pronounce it right.
It's Faith, and it's
Beth.
means the
It's
house.
actually Bina,
Yeah,
which is
Well,
also
you've got Bina.
yeah,
Bina
it's
is
Bina.
different from Faith.
yeah, yeah. So these are actually very symbolic. They have numbers and just whole bunch of stuff. Okay, you ready to do your thing, Richard?
This is the one I found really quick, and I remember I had a slide deck on Aleph, and I don't know if you guys can see this. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. As you can see, the Hebrew letter Aleph is the first of the 22 letters. It's assigned a value of 1. It's also assigned to air and to Uranus. It also, there we go. There's the ox. The Aleph means ox in English, but it has several other different similar meanings than just ox within this. And when you look at the letter Aleph, these are called yods right here. And so you will find this shape, and they represent the higher and the lower waters and the firmament between, meaning the higher consciousness and the lower consciousness as well right there. So to his point, there is a tremendous amount of information that exists right along within each one of these letters, because here in the US, our English language, we know A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We don't know any kind of information that's behind each one of those. Whereas if you go into this is called the fire language. Obviously, it looks like a bunch of, wicks of flame in a lot of their lettering. And so this is the fire language, and it has a tremendous amount of meanings behind each one. This is why when you find a bunch of different scholars that have translated, say, older texts or older scriptures or whatever, you find a variance in the way that they bring out the different sentences that they have translated through this. It's because there are so many different ways that letter can be interpreted. Not only that, but then when you create a word out of the Hebrew language, that word embodies the actual essence of each one of those letters. So that's where the meaning behind that actual word comes from. This is why it's very difficult for a lot of people that are trying to translate these, is because of the wide range of information that's available in each one of these letters and then compositing those into a single word. So does that kind of...
Oh yeah, that launches us pretty deep.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's showing us like a relativity and perspective, right? Like how you arrange the word is as much as how we arrange ourselves in the world. We see
Absolutely
different meaning.
Yep. And there's actually a lot of meaning that's been given to the numbers as well. So, for example, like zero, the zero, it stands for like no thing. One, the meaning behind that is beginning. 2 is duplication. 3 is multiplication. 4 is order. And then you have 5, which is mediation. 6, reciprocation. 7, equilibrium. 8 is rhythm, and 9 is conclusion. So that brings you from 0 through 9, and then you begin to start combining those, 2 of them being beginning, etc., right? 2 of them, 2 ones put together, 1 plus 1 is 2. That gives you duplication. Anyway, so there's a lot of different meanings that are sitting behind each one of those words. Also, whenever we're looking at a lot of symbols, many of times whenever you see straight lines, things that are just absolutely straight and rigid, that is representing some kind of masculine energy. And remember, we went through kind of a list of things that the masculine energy represents as a symbol. And then if you see things with curves, that is feminine energy. That is the balance between the masculine and the feminine. So whenever you've got your rigid lines, that's a masculine energy. Whenever you've got your wavy lines, that a lot of times is going to be your feminine energy. So I'm trying to look at our time and make sure that we're not getting too far off course here. Also, whenever we start looking at things like just basic geometric shapes, let's look at, for example, the square, right? The square is going to represent either A square, or B, a cube, a 3D representation of that square. A lot of meanings behind that could be the material world, stability and solidity. It'll be the 4 elements, the 4 directions. It can stand for manifestation. It can stand for limitation and boundaries. Why? Because if you have seen in a lot of different belief systems, say, for example, like Judaism, you will see that they wear a black cube on their forehead when they're at the wall and they're praying. You'll find that in the Muslim world, they go around the black cube. It's part of every journey that every Muslim should do in their lifetime at least once. Go to Mecca and go circle that cube. There's a lot of information that sits right behind what that cube is. And Oh, I've got a list of things about that. If I can find it real quick. Yeah, here we go. So one of the things I found very interesting while we're on the topic of the cube was somehow in our ancient past, they knew that at the very top of Saturn sits a 3D black cube at the very polar region of Saturn. I thought that was just incredibly interesting because Saturn as a symbol is very restrictive. It is the teacher. It is something that is going to restrict and focus you into some kind of something that you must learn, right? Saturn is known as being a very restrictive force. Why is it considered to be a restrictive force? Well, that black cube. When you begin to start looking at a lot of the different belief systems out there, it is this 3D world that we're in they consider or represent as a black cube. And from the darkness, the light came, pierced the darkness, and created everything that we have. So that's in a lot of different belief systems. You also have sacred geometry with the Metatron's cube, and that's a definite complex figure that's formed. And it's said to contain all of the building blocks of creation and represent interconnectedness in the world. So there's all kinds of different meanings behind different just basic symbols, like for example, you've got your downward triangle, your down facing triangle, and that is a feminine water element. It is a descending energy. It's passive force. That's what that downward triangle means. Whereas an upward triangle we'll find is a masculine energy. It's a fire element. It's ascending energy. It's, a lot of different things. Now, if you have a upward pointed triangle with a line going across, that's going to stand for an air element. And so when, and the air element is, feminine. What I find interesting is that out of the four elements, you've got your upward triangle with the line, your downward triangle with the line, your upward triangle, and your downward triangle. Out of all of those, there is one masculine and three feminines. So it's very interesting, the connection between it. Now, when you combine all four of these symbols together, what do you get? You get the Star of David. It is the six-pointed star. It is the name's going right out of my head here. The hexagram. That's it. And so you get the hexagram because if you take your upward triangle and then you put your downward triangle, you have a hexagram. And I think that's some pretty interesting stuff when you start getting into all of those different symbols. When we look at, for example, you've seen like the curly cube, right? The curly cube, that represents growth. It represents evolution. It represents the cyclical nature of life. One of the things that we're going to get into here in just a minute, I'm running on time here, but is the equilateral cross or the plus symbol. Many times when you have that with a circle around it, that is what's considered to be the solar cross. And it represents the wheels of time. It represents the solar deity. And you will find that in a tremendous amount of different structures. If you look at most of the churches, you may or may not realize, but somewhere on that church architecture is going to be a round window with an equilateral cross right in the middle of it. Fascinating stuff when you start seeing that these things have got a tremendous amount of symbols all around and built into a lot of these structures.
I think that's a great segue into those pictures you were showing me. I'm just anxious for them to see what you showed me. It's like, okay, this is such good pictures.
All right. let me see if I can pull one of those up here. And as I said, I went to Ukraine because I worked for a Ukrainian software company for many years. And so I was really grateful for the opportunity to be able to go over to Ukraine, not only to Ukraine, but also I went to the very far east of Ukraine where Kharkiv is. And unfortunately, from what I understand, that's just been absolutely decimated through this war, which is, it's sad because the pictures I'm about to show you, most of these came from Kharkiv. And then the other place that I was able to spend a lot of time in was Lviv, which is the capital of Ukraine. And there's a lot of churches there. So I'm trying to get to go. Let me share my screen without just sitting here chatting along. Okay. Tell me if you can see this.
Yes.
Okay. This right here is actually a gate that you enter in through in order to come into the courtyard of the church. And I found it very interesting because a minute ago, we were just going through the tree of life. And you remember I mentioned something about, you've got your four worlds. Here's your four worlds. Here's your Asiya, Yetzirah, Bria, Atziluth. It's all right there. You have this from circle to circle comes down, and that is the what we were just talking about, the element of water, the element of fire. That's all put right there in front of you. You see that you have the ain, and I got this backwards. This is actually supposed to be the Ein Sof, and the Ein Sof are. And that is the three levels above that top Sephirah that I just showed you in the Tree of Life. There are three layers above that, and that's being represented because you can see that these are step downs as they go into the main structure of the gate. So it is those four worlds that are stepping down. If anybody here has ever played with power, you know that many times you have to use transformers and ways to step that power down from the power generation until it gets into each one of our homes. Well, just the same way that we have to step down that voltage and step down that power, so we go through this stepping down process and this entering into process within the energies. Now, you can also see that we have three distinct pillar formations, basically. You've got the pillar of severity and the pillar of mercy on the side. And in the Christian religion, it talks about the straight and narrow pathway. It is this pathway straight up the middle right here. And it is coming through that pillar of mildness right here in the middle. So let's see here. I move. There we go. Again, this is the ground floor. And you'll notice that on the ground floor, they have the solar cross. This is what I was talking about the circle with the equilateral cross. This is down at the floor and it's down at the ground level. And it is finding balance. And many things that whenever you go through, it really doesn't matter. A lot of the belief systems, one of the core principles is finding balance, finding your center, finding that level. Well, that's what this certainly represents, is finding that center of yourself within, because it is from the heart center outward that we can express life. This right here was a very interesting place. Again, this is, if you see down here at the floor, this is the hexagram that I was just talking about. And so you've got your, fire and your water, and then of course the symbols all here. Now you've also got outside of this circle, these are the 5 elements that come together that create that experience that we have in this 3D world. And as you can see, you've got your 3 bands on the outside again. And the way I see this is there's a thing called the pattern on the trestle board, and this is what I was going through. So this is what was in my mind at the time when I was looking at this. And one of the things on the pattern of the trestle board says that all the power that ever was or will be is here now. And that is in this area here. It is all self-contained. I am the center of expression for the primal will to good, which eternally creates and sustains the universe. It is that center of being. You'll notice that as we look at this, we're also shown, you've got the entire tree of life. It's all built into that structure coming up. You've got the patterns. Now, let's jump back real quick to consciousness and subconsciousness. Your subconscious, its primary job is to categorize, connect, and label everything that you've experienced, whether you see it with your conscious mind or not. This is how it gets past that guardian at the gate. It's because everything that you're looking at here, unless you actually are looking for these symbols in here, it is getting right past your conscious mind and into your subconscious. And that subconscious, if it does not have anything to tie itself to or understand, it then moves out into the archetypal images and draws that information into you. And that is what starts coming up and through your expression. So many times you're going to find that symbols are not very in your face as a symbol, but yet it's there. And that's what your subconscious mind does. It starts looking for those symbols. It starts looking for those patterns. It starts looking for all the ways to categorize your experience. Again, going back, this is another one of them that I wrote up. Quite a lot of information going on here. You have your eye of providence in the middle. You know, this could represent the third eye I've got down here. You'll notice that in these symbols with the green going around in here, there are specifically 7 chakras. I think Joe Dispenza calls them energy centers. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. And other systems of belief would be, like your interior stars, your inner planets, these kind of things. Everybody's got a different way of saying what they're trying to express, but at the end of the day, at the core, it's the same thing. So there's quite a lot going on in this one. Let me see if I can. Now, this is a very interesting symbol, and it's something that I don't know if anybody has seen like a pelican, but the pelican, when I finally realized what this symbol was trying to convey, is that a pelican will take its own flesh to feed its young. So from itself, it will feed its young. And it's a definite deep symbol right there, because when you begin to understand the connection between the human experience and the Almighty, or the one supreme power, whatever you name that, it is from that being that you are fed and given life. And the symbol here is very profound. Remember when I started out saying that there's a lot of times that you will see the use of symbolism as in nature, right? What's in nature, animals in nature and that kind of thing. They are using that symbolism to explain and to show you that it is from the Father feeding you into this experience. And I thought that was just fantastic. Now, here's something definitely to consider. This right here is a tarot card. Again, remember when I was saying that a single symbol contained, volumes of information, but then when you take that symbol and you start connecting it together into different things, it's just like, wow, it's endless amounts of information that is just simply sitting there in front of you. And until you take the time to really start drawing forth a lot of that information, doing your research, and that's what I call the priming. When you prime the pump by, reading and learning and all of this other stuff, and then you meditate on it, all of that comes together and starts coming out. But there's a reason why I wanted to show you this particular card, and this will be fun if you'll give me just a second to set up this screen this way. Screen 2. Tell me if you guys could see this.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So when we're looking at this, what's very interesting is I walked into several cathedrals in Ukraine, and this is not the only one that I happened to see this in. And let me find the other one here. There we go. Now, if you'll notice here, in all four corners here, when you're looking up at the ceiling, you have the eagle right here, which is very much the same as the eagle here. You have the bull, which is here. You have the angel, which is up here. And you have the lion, which is down here. Now, there's only two cards that have these four animals, and it's this and I think the world card. The only difference is the bull is facing outward on the world card. But again, we find the same symbolism here in this one. You have the lion, you have the angel, you have the eagle, and you have the bull right there. And so, it really begs to question, why is it that, I was raised very much Midwestern Bible Belt, non-denominational Christian. And I was told my entire childhood that astrology was something of the devil. And that, anything that was not Christianity was pretty much bad news. But yet I find what is very interesting is that all of this information is sitting there. Now, this is the lion represents Leo and fire. This is a fixed cardinal sign in astrology. The man, Aquarius, right here, air, it's a fixed sign. Eagle, Scorpio, water, fixed sign here. Now, this is going to blow your mind. As I said, there was a reason why we went through a lot of that stuff to begin with. Now, oh man, that one didn't flip around. But anyway, can you guys see this arch right here?
Yes. Yeah, we see.
Everybody can see that arch?
Yeah, it's clear on my computer.
Here's what's interesting about this arch. There. Why isn't that opening up? There we go.
There you go. Yes, I see it.
Within this arch, you can start seeing it. This is Libra right here. This is all the constellations, all 12 constellations that is going through this arc, all the way through, right here, from beginning to end. Now, remember we were talking about the fact that there were four worlds, absolute worlds, right? When you're looking at this, and remember I had brought up the Ein, the Ein Sof, and the Ein Sof Or. You have the Ein Sof, Ein Sof Or right there. And then right here, you can see these are step downs coming down from the top of that ceiling, coming straight down. And those are going to look like this right here. And they step down into the physical world. So again, the symbolism just in this church right here, you are seeing the graduation of the energies from the divine coming down and stepping down through those four worlds into this physical place that we're at. This physical place has the overarching archetypes of every single one of these different zodiac signs that are sitting right there. I mean, you can see that this is Cancer the crab right there. It's very clear. And I thought it was just absolutely fascinating. Now, here's something else that'll blow your mind. See this church right here? This was built in 1518. When you walk in the door and you go to the right, you are greeted with this when you walk into the church. And it's just directly down to your right. It's the stone that is sitting there. What's very interesting is again, you have the bull. You have the six-pointed star up here. Again, this could be two triangles, right? Here to here and down. This could be two triangles. This is sitting on top of a 5-petaled rose. A 5-petaled rose stands for, because it is a red rose, it is colored. That means that there is substance to the intention versus a white rose, which has no intention to it. This right here is on the 5-petaled rose, which stands for the 5 senses. It is the 5 senses that we experience. This experience that we're in is through those 5 senses. And then, of course, we have the 7 rays up here. Now, what I did is I was sitting on a plane one day coming back from Ukraine, and I went ahead and did this and started looking at all of the things that this meant. And here we go. This is it coming in. So, all right. Let's pause that. Now, does everybody can see that?
Yes, I got it clear.
Okay. So, number 7. What can the number 7 mean? Well, some of the meanings could be the 7 rays or the 7 chakras that we were just talking about, or the 7 energy centers that are within the body. Also, we can consider the 7 churches, which there's a lot of debate, but they could very well be representative of the 7 chakras, 7 days of the week, the 7 seals, that kind of thing. So you've got this number 7 here. Remember I showed you that here, that star, we have the Star of David or the hexagram again, if we trace that out that way. And then, of course, you can also pull out another 5-pointed star. Now, the 5-pointed star, when it is up, it is spirit at the very top, and then you have fire and water and earth and air on the other 4. And it is from spirit that everything is created into it. Also, we'll find that we are in a double cube, which brings you into the cube symbolism that we were talking about. And as I mentioned before about the 5-petaled rose and the 5 senses, we have the bull. And the bull is fixed to earth. It also, bull, Aleph, right back to the same thing that we talked about earlier about Aleph being the bull. We have a symbol of the moon sitting here. The moon represents subconsciousness. It also represents, like the Virgin Mary, her symbol as subconsciousness rules. This moon rules the lymphatic system, and it rules the personality. Taurus, body, correlation, soul, fasting, one thing, one mind, that kind of thing right here. Taurus is the Apis bull. You have all of your elements that I was talking about all represented within here. So it's just incredible when you start looking at the different symbols that they're using. Now, one of the things that I found very interesting was this. And this is a doorway. So you're going from outside and you're coming into the temple or into the inner church, which means you are moving through the straight and narrow way. You've got your pillars, you've got all of the different symbolism that's sitting here. You have the solar cross up there that is, again, in your upward triangle. Oh, let's see, what else did we find? This right here is at the top of a church that's in Ukraine as well. You can see it's very clearly built out to be the tree of life pattern that I was showing you before. Remember, I was talking about the curly cues and how these things, but you'll notice that these are opposite directions. Why? Because each pole reflects each other and yet is the opposite of the other. So these energies are running in two different directions. But you clearly have the tree of life built out right here in this structure. Oh my goodness, there's all kinds of stuff. What else can I show you? I know we've gone over time already. Oh, something that I wanted to bring up as well was one of the churches that I went to and saw was this one right here. Absolutely beautiful place, but you'll notice something very interesting. And that is right here, you have nothing but red roses. These are the 5-petaled roses. Now you will find, right here's a close-up picture of one of the roses. Interesting that they have a full garden there. And when I talked to the priest, he told me that the previous priest that lived there, the gentleman that passed away right here, is the one that planted and tended to this garden of 5-petaled roses. He obviously knew the significance and the meaning behind those 5-petaled roses. So it's, I mean, I just keep going on. I've got tons of different pictures. You'll find that like this one right here is an absolutely beautiful church that is in Kharkiv. And again, you can see the symbolism brought together because right here in the middle is where you have Jesus, and that is Tipperet in the Tree of Life. And that is where Dion Fortune says that all the sacrifice saviors are represented within the Tipperet or in the heart center. So it's very interesting to see all this symbolism that's all over all of these different churches. And remember, I was talking about the pelican earlier as well. And you can find here in that one church, here is that pelican again. And that pelican is part of the symbolism. So that's it. I mean, we could go on forever, but hopefully that kind of gives you guys a little bit of information on symbols and how they can be presented to you, all different ways that they could mean. And now we'll just open it up for questions.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Very informative. Gorgeous stuff you showed from Ukraine. Amazing, everything. Thank you so much for your time, your knowledge, all of you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for actually sitting around and listening.
Absolutely. Looking forward for more, Ray. I swear to God, loved it every minute.
All right. Now, I love it when somebody gives me a good segue, don't you, Richard?
Yep. There you go.
If we were to plan this and have version level 2 that goes into steps past our history lesson for today and makes it a little bit more current, shall we say, in energy work, would you guys like that?
I'll vote yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Richard, if you choose to accept the assignment, I think you've got a welcome to give us.
I accept.
There you go.